I'm Natalie. Hi.
Oh, probably.
How do you?
Welcome. It's so wonderful to see you all here. Thank you for being here. My name is Bonnie. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the poetry event coordinator here at Brookline Booksmith. Today, it is my absolute pleasure to host 4 incredible poets, Jess Yuan, Joshua Nguyen, Jess Rizkallah, and Amanda Gunn, to share work from their amazing collections of poetry. Before I do introductions, I do just have a few housekeeping notes for everybody. Firstly, copies of the poets' books are available for sale at the back counter over there. I encourage you to support these poets' works in whatever way you can, whether that means buying a book, following them on social media, saying nice things to them while they're here. All is great. Even being in this room is a huge show of support, so thank you for being here. Secondly, please keep your phones off or on silent while our poets are reading, and thank you for being considerate. Please know as well that the event's being live streamed. Hello, YouTube. This iPad sort of situation right here, our audience should not be visible to anyone who's tuning in on YouTube, but if you don't want to be live on YouTube, just try to avoid standing directly in front of it, and you'll be good to go. And finally, we will have a Q&A at the end of the event, followed by a signing. So hold questions until the end, but definitely have them ready to go. We, in addition to wonderful poetry programming like tonight, we also have a monthly reading series that takes place on the 3rd Thursday of every month here at the store. So if you're interested in that or some of our other poetry events, please check us out online. And now for the fun part, introductions. Jess Yuan is a poet, educator, and architect. She's the author of Slow Render, which came out this year. Congratulations. The winner of the Air League Prize, and she is also the author of Threshold Amnesia, winner of the Yemassee Chapbook Contest selected by Justin Philip Reed. She's a Kunneman Fellow, and her poems appear in Best New Poets, Tupelo Quarterly Review, Beloit Poetry Journal, and elsewhere. She received her BA in Architecture from Yale and Master's in Architecture from Harvard Graduate School of Design, and she's taught architectural studios at Wentworth and Boston Architectural College. She's currently an MFA candidate in poetry at the writing seminars at Johns Hopkins. Born in California to Chinese immigrants, she's based in Boston and Baltimore with her spouse. Jess, it is so wonderful to have you here to share your work. Thank you. And of course, Joshua Nguyen is the author of Come Clean, winner of the Felix Poet Prize in Poetry. Ooh, a lot of P's there. The Writers League of Texas Discovery Award and the Mississippi Institute of Arts and Letters Poetry Award. He's also the author of the chapbooks American Look Back for My Mother and Hidden Labor and the Naked Body. He's a Vietnamese-American writer, a collegiate national poetry slam champion, and a native Houstonian. He's received fellowships from Kundiman, Tin House, Sundress Academy for the Arts, and the Vermont Studio Center, and is a humor editor for the Offing Mag. He received his MFA and PhD from the University of Mississippi and currently teaches at Tufts. We had the privilege of hosting Joshua a year or 2 ago, back when we were still doing events downstairs, so it's wonderful to have you back. Thanks for being here, Joshua. And Jess Rizkallah is a Lebanese poet and visual artist. Her book, The Magic My Body Becomes, won the Atel Adnan Poetry Prize as awarded by the Radius of Arab American Writers and the University of Arkansas Press. Jess was a 2022 Massachusetts Cultural Council Artist Fellow, is a Pushcart-nominated writer and Believer Poetry Award finalist, among other honors. She received her bachelor's in English from Lesley University and her MFA in poetry from NYU. She's a founding editor of Pizza Pie Press, which publishes zines, chapbooks, and a magazine called Maps for Teeth. Her own zines include If Love is a Chemical, So What, Who Cares, and Anyway. You can find Jess's writing in places such as Word Riot, Nailed Magazine, Button Poetry, and others. She's a friend of the store, and it's always lovely to have you. Welcome back, Jess. Thanks for being here. And last, but certainly not least, Amanda Gunn is a poet, teacher, and PhD candidate in English at Harvard, where she studies poetry, ephemerality, and Black pleasure. Raised in Connecticut, she worked as a medical copy editor for 13 years before earning an MFA in poetry from the Johns Hopkins Writing Seminars. She's the recipient of the Auburn Witness Poetry Prize as well as a Pushcart Prize, and has received fellowships from the Wallace Stegner Program at Stanford, the Civitella Ranieri Foundation, the Rona Jaffe Foundation, the Breadloaf Writers Conference, and the Kenyon Review Writers Workshop. You can find her work in places like Poetry, Los Angeles Review of Books, and Narrative Magazine, among others. Her debut collection, Things I Didn't Do With This Body, was released last year from Copper Canyon Press. Congratulations on your book. And Amanda, we are so delighted to welcome you to the store. Well, we're in for a really, really wonderful evening of poetry. Please give a warm welcome to our poets.
Oh shit, is that Jess?
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Sometimes I'm a mumbler. It's very cool to be here. Is that better?
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you. It's cool to be here and to celebrate Jess's book. I'll try not to banter too much. I wanted to open with a poem by a Palestinian poet named Rifat al-Arid. He was assassinated by Israel in December. If I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings. Make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. Let it be a tale. Q-teen thoughts. Remember the quarantines? With the line from Psych, which I'll tell you the line after. The past is a djinn sitting on your chest. Dreams aren't warnings, they are forecasts. The weather will always get inside your body where the convergence of meaning strikes, so learn to swim. The other woman is you with different teeth. Always a rose on the table for blessings and two for love, which is just a container for a shared vocabulary of symbols. Stand in front of your mirror. What tarot card are you today? Consider your posture. Are you held up by a stem, a wick, a sword in stone, waiting for the hand of God? Ya God, Ya Allah. God and Allah are the same articulations of wind realized at different registers. You don't have to be praying all the time. Often you are heard the first time, a gift to be read. You are always a watcher, but it's never too late to be a doer, to plunge a trowel into dirt and tuck a seed behind the unknown's ear. The sun is a sound, the heart is a radio when you dream of your love singing, and a thermometer when you begin to forget the shape of their ears. An owl is just the sky whistling through its nose while sleeping, when the color blue rests its eyes and it's just night, not sadness. There's a million reasons a horse loses. None of them have to do with crystals and moonbeams, but partly to do with blood. The tools are important, but ultimately, do you know how to be your own light dappled through milkweed? Butterflies and moths are two sides of the same shaft of light. Their shadows on the wall, a projection, two sides of the same hope. You're protected. Can anybody see the future? What's over there? Why is there always a president? Why is everyone a cop or a test? If you drop a question mark, you're supposed to flip it heads up for the next person, the bulb from which a penny grows. Dead ends are doors with no handles. Even in hell, you keep digging. Fate is just pheromones. That's a cool sentence, but do I believe it? That's a nice question, but can it carry my weight? When a sickness doesn't kill you, but still takes pounds of flesh, there is a separate heaven for your melted parts. And the clouds spread above us. Our bodies are part of the water cycle. Water has memory.
Our bodies repeat like calendars. The clouds are archives. Fact check me, baby. Then strike the record. The world's a needle, like my finger when I trace the lines in his palm, and then a black bird flew out of his mouth. In the dead of night, a song, graceful, mine. That's just one example. I don't have another. The line from Psych was, "There's a million reasons a horse loses. None of them have to do with crystals and moonbeams." That's so good. I want love, but Saturn wants me to love myself. Everything reminds me of my dead friend. I average 7 to 10 miles a day on foot to avoid the trains. He did too when his friend died. Now they both have wings and I have to buy new shoes. My appetite wanes and waxes. The shape of my belly button changes as often as the tides. Right now, upside down crescent, but my spine is a crucifix. Inside me is a rosette, a pinwheel spinning out waiting for me to make a move, any move. My ancestors send birds with our origin story wound like scrolls inside their tiny bird brains. I let them sing and sing. My suspension is their cage. Antiquity is losing patience with me. Urgency repeatedly climbs in, then falls out of my head and takes memories with it each time. Would, if I could, wrap my movements like ribbons around the maypole of my navel. My core a planet and the rest of me rings. Let me be a bangled wrist rhythmic under ambient light and melody of night. Watch me dance, but only with your eyes closed. My waist a wasteland of epigenetic IBS. White belly dancers are annoying, and partly because I should know how to do that. Sometimes being of diaspora feels like being the fucked up pug version of the self you were supposed to be. So much depends upon iced coffee and a bagel and institutionalized oppression. So much depends upon not frying the amygdala on the hot pan of the American public school system. Sunny side up. Smile big, smile nice, don't forget to wear your retainer to bed. Your teeth move the rest of your life, like buoys, like boats, like bodies in the bay. Watch your mouth. Not like a guard, but more like something naked under the moon, imitation of annihilation, until you too can move the water in a body just by breaking out of yours. That's what the voice is, a prisoner free at dusk and captured by dawn. Oh, to scream myself inside out. Oh, to tuck the outer parts of me inside of me and free the parts of me I believe in. My guts and all their squirming fingers pointing up at the sky. Though if I could see them, maybe I'd stop believing. Can't have that. I need that bump in the night. I need something that gets me out of bed, that shakes me out of dreams I have where I'm chased by tortoises and then lapped by them. Anyway, you didn't text me back in time, so now I'm applying to divinity school. Just kidding, unless. Okay, but it's not all thrown bones and angels, all wings and wheels and eyes bleeding at the sight of me. I want to believe it's belief and being believed. But I'm a casually haunted hoe hung up on skeptics and himbos who don't appreciate my longing, but va-va-voom, they like the shape of it. Anyway, I bet Victorian lesbians never had to deal with someone trying to hack into their PayPal while they sat stalled in the Wendy's parking lot in the middle of crying about their breakup. They just walk into the sea, girls uninterrupted. Anyway, everything's a gift once time is done dusting it. That's what all the disappointment taught me. Anyway, his eyes, 2 records, skipping stones across my stomach, and all the hairs ripple. Suddenly I'm circles, suddenly I'm still. Anyway, a knife is a weapon, but also for cutting fruit. A tongue is a knife, but also gently seals the envelope. The envelope slices back if you tear through with your fingernails. Have you ever seen the movie Teeth? Me neither, but he's looking for a hot girl to roll his weed. Okay, so I do it like Wara Arish, the bad vibes, I'm Jed bro, let me know. Anyway, sometimes the memory of the dream isn't in the brain, it's in the body or in the mood, which is the brain's shadow, indecipherable, save for its outline, so save its outline. Sometimes my intelligence feels more intuitive than earned, my words as cities made of blocks. I open my mouth, it all falls apart, but at least it makes that fun blocks falling apart sound. My meaning making music I can't translate into particles outside my head, so I just rested on his shoulder as he fingers the keys. Any way I write, it hurts. Thank you. It's my last one. Maybe it's not always the evil eye. Sometimes it's just systemic racism, ethical loneliness, dirty water, a terrible country. I read that Sufis want God now, day to day in life, the same way morning comes and how eyes open then close after the rest of the body shuts down. Same way light bulbs flicker when you talk to the ceiling. There are hundreds of ways to kiss the ground, each way a landline to the ancestors, a pipeline and a river, big slick snake pushing up sacred burials, then leaking into the water, already filled with polyester that fill the fish we eat. And I've burned through 18 candles in the last month, a box of dragon's blood, a stick of endangered Palo Santo. My smoke signals fishbowl the stratosphere. I want to access the Akashic records to find my cosmic car keys and what's the best pot pie recipe. I'm looking up to find pictures like that scene in Cinderella when she's scrubbing the floor and all the bubbles fill the room, a multiverse of mirror images bumping, then popping, each one a different color, and she sings, and the mice are there the whole time, like where I lived when I thought I was gonna die. In that apartment, my roommate's cat was transfixed by ghosts. She would stare at walls, meowing for minutes on end, while the mice chewed on my clothes, stole my chocolates, then a compendium of wrappers at the back of my closet, a fucked up treasure trove I found the day I moved out. Before that, we spread salt, but the cat kept at it. The ghosts left, but the mice remained in the walls. Landlords are assholes. I suppose my filter is improving. On the steps of the Riverwalk, I watched transfixed as pelicans dipped from the sky to graze the water, and I didn't interrupt the conversation about equity. Astrology says the ocean is why I'm like this, but how do I write about the ocean without mentioning the Atlantic slave trade and the refugee babies who wash up on Facebook feeds? Every poem about the ocean has bones at the bottom of it, even if we can't see past our toes. We splash, we lick the salt from our lips. I wonder whose tears were these before we use them to cleanse the tumbled stone at the center of our chests. At the end of every beach day, me and Mama collect the ocean in plastic bottles and stack them in the trunk of the car. We do this because salt water is good for the psoriasis on Theta's legs. Carefully, she empties the bottle over her skin, anxious for this potion stirred by the moon, which is pierced by an American flag in every horoscope she appears in. The elephant on the moon calling out to all the ones in all the rooms late at night where candles burn, and we want to know if the flickers mean something, if the dead are just dead, if after all this time energy is just wind, if the invisible hands on our chests belong to something bigger than inertia, older than all of us. Thank you.
That was incredible. Thank you so much for that reading. I wanted to, well, can you hear me first? Am I sufficiently close? Okay. Everybody for coming out tonight. And I and I want to thank Jess again for inviting me to read with these wonderful poets. Thank you to Brookline Booksmith and especially to Bonnie for organizing everything so beautifully and getting us together in this great space. I'm going to read 2 poems from my book and 2 new pieces. The first is, I guess, an American sonnet I wrote for my dad. It's called Father at Table. There was what he demanded with one word and a pointing finger. Chicken, cornbread, tables. The delicacies his labor both purchased and prepared for us. All his long hours. Trying not to interrupt the table talk that had snapped shut and refused him. Not vain, not white folk. He asked only one courtesy. No swearing he could hear. He was a Christian and my father. That God-forsaken finger. How stingy it seemed then. Now, how tender, how pleading. How I bristled at the soft of his voice, an engine rumbling under the hood of our attention. And oh, what kindness I held back, expecting things he would never ask of me. Wait your turn. Say thank you. Say please. The second poem I'm going to read is a newer poem. It's called Girls' Day, which I wrote when I was living in California. Girls' Day. It has nothing to do with you that she shares your name, my new friend, with whom tomorrow I will hie off to wine country. Neither of us drinks, it bores her. And the way you went, darling, I won't touch the stuff. I live in the state of California beside a bush lit with hummingbirds who drink as if these were the earth's last sugars. Everything tastes different. I eat pineapple-flavored edibles. I scent my rooms with tonka and peppermint. My friend and I take our girls' day without her husband or kids, without my solitudes. We climb nude into a bath of chunky, slime-slick clay. Side by side, we shower, dig out from our vaginas blood-like clots of peat. Mineral heat unlocks the wooden drawer of our complaints. What we give, what we take but shouldn't take. We speak like girlfriends. I mean, the other kind. I loved you terribly. Summer mornings, breast to breast in the icy sound. I'd shiver to shore. You'd swim alone, farther and farther, so perilous out. Can you see me through the loose strumming of the waves? I have left the window open for you. Do you know to find me? She's good company, good-humored, real, has a gift for listening, for ease. From time to time, I get to say your living name. Is from a series of poems all titled Unhelpful, very unhelpfully Dream. They're all called Dream. This is Dream 3. There are so many things a body can collect into itself. Milk of a mother in a cup of coffee, an omelet of precious potential. We eat, we express, there is no throwing away. Everything takes up space somewhere. Where did she land? Whimsical chiffon hostess dress I thrifted at 16, my first copy of Patience and Sarah, slender Bible into which I prayed for love. I eat and release, purchase and pass, a flow of goods through my infinitesimal life. The thought of losing you on a Friday urges me into acquisition, a handbag already nicked on its leather, 3 crystal-caught perfumes, all of them edible, ylang-ylang, soft and golden as warm butter, made mist, made air, made nothing. How long until I am dead, broke? How long will I even keep them? Consumption is the best way to forget the police cars, the men thick in riot gear at the foot of your building, your primordial voice roaring into the periwinkle sky, the sound pixelating the sunshine on the most terrible day of our life, us on the ground, asymptoting our voices toward you. I will again almost, then certainly lose you. Now, this moment, I understand that. Either to your madness or mine, a way of saying we were born, we were raised, in the breeze our whole skin hurts. Daylight is burning, turning into something else. Memory. At night, I dream of bread I cannot afford. My body is eating itself from its teeth down, from its feet up. Though I am instructed to trust my steps, I cannot feel the earth anymore. Oh, my nerves, I took lithium until the spark in my wires died, until the earth fell from me forever, like my favorite book, like my sweet brother, alone, terrorized, punching the expanse above a cement balcony, like the most fetching dress I have ever owned and never found occasion to wear. Okay, so this last poem is a title poem for my book. It's called Things I Didn't Do with This Body and Things I Did. I didn't bear a child with it, bear a drunk friend's arm around its shoulders, bear it over a fence in one go, bear it from Harlem to Wall Street by foot, run it until it vomited, run it until it vibrated with joy. Lean it long against a redwood it had hiked to, lay it on the earth beneath the aurora borealis. March it white-laced until it wed. March it in Baltimore for a killed black man. March it to war until it was dead. Bear a lover eager on its spine. Bear it back to its natal soil. Bear it to the lake's center under the swift, awesome power of its legs. Bear witness. I did not make its child. I didn't bear it to the home it asked me for. Instead, as if by stumbling, as if by walking backward even, as if the beginning and not the end held the drum and cymbal and jazz hands. I bore 3 lovers in its mouth, bore a blow to its cheek, bore the snap and drag of the Atlantic at high tide, bared its breasts on that beach, scored its ankle with a knife 12 thin times, bored into the white underflesh of its thigh, bore its scars, bore tattoos to cover its scars, bore hot wax where it was tenderest, bore on its face a heavy, pretty face, bore smoke deep in its tissues, bore the soft, bore the love of its family, withheld from it embraces, withheld from it a decent meal, bore love for the boy who refused it, bore the death of the boy who didn't, bore the weight it made from the pills I had handed it, bore its joints' irreparable ache, bore the turned, sweet smell beneath its breast, taught water to bear it so I could rest, bore its sloughings, bore its swellings, bore its manifold solitudes, and on the rare, keen nights it stayed with me, I bore its bright, fragrant, solitary, intolerable pleasure. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me? I don't know if it's the pre-Taco Bell I had, but there's a nice vibe in this reading. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Jess, for having me read. I have 4 poems as well, 2 new ones, 2 from my book. I can start with the question. Raise your hand if you ever did food service for a job. Nice. This is for us, for y'all. This is kind of based off when I was doing Grubhub and DoorDash, Postmates in Austin, Texas. I did like the midnight to 3 a.m. shift, so I can encounter a lot of wild times. And so this poem is based off one of those wild times. This is, after I was mistaken for the stripper while delivering barbecue to an all-white bachelorette party. 1. If I had a stripper name, it would be pork loins. Marinated in my mother's seasoning, I am mostly bone, but my butt is meaty. My neck is long, but you can still love me if you want a brisket. In the eventual end, it will be my own doing. If I had a dollar bill for every human who wanted to see me naked, I'd still be paying loans back. Being wanted was never simmered. I am the lamb's wool and the wolf crying beneath thin skin, licked between my ribs in rich blandness. I am best served with oyster sauce. 2. And there I stood, a bag of meat, head in the crosshairs, unknown terrain, door closing behind, young deer in the trenches, stay motionless. Don't make the first move, kindled fire, feet too warm, apple between the teeth, arrow pointed to the navel, knives and forks in stomachs, lack of fat, sucked bones, upside down, blood draining, unconscious. Serpent at my throat, boiling rice, serpent in my throat, not clean, serpent down my throat. 3. Is this what being a sacrifice smells like? 26 jewel-studded cowboy boots circle me, tongues glistening in the spur of heat. So this is gonna be like an interactive part of the performance. My second collection thinks about the book as an artifact and how can we interact with the book beyond the reader and the speaker in the poem. So this poem, when you get to it, in my mind, is like a Mad Lib, and you get to rip out the creation that you create, and we kind of create a poem together, the speaker, the book, and the reader. So I got some answers before the reading, but I still need some more. So I just shout it out. Can someone give me a type of alcohol? Sake. Tight. Can someone give me a U.S. state? Wyoming. Cool. Can someone give me a type of bone?
Femur.
Femur.
I'm always waiting for a femur.
Can someone give me a duration of time? Any duration of time?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. I feel that right now. Yeah, 2 minutes. A sharp object. A chopstick. And then someone's nickname. Anyone's nickname. Your nickname or a friend's nickname?
Big dog.
Did you say big dog? Big dog? Big dog. Like the Tiger Woods meme, nice. All right, so there are 17 answers. So 1, nickname for lover, love. A U.S. state, Arkansas. Type of insect, plural, June bugs. Type of alcohol, sake. Type of family member, brother. A southern writer, Faulkner, U.S. state, Wyoming. A critical theory, performance theory. A gerund, blinking. Another word for dirt, soil. Type of bone, plural, femurs. Something with the roof, shelter. Type of bone, clavicle. Something written, plural, poems. Duration of time, 2 minutes. Sharp object, chopsticks. A nickname, Big Dog. Awesome. This poem is called How to Write Your Final Note to Your Lover. Love. Blink along with the Arkansas June bugs, pouring a bottle of sake for your brother and Faulkner in the deserted art studio in Wyoming where we talked about performance theory under the blinking moon. If you're reading this in soil, then my wish to be buried with all my remaining papers came true. Feel free to scavenge the remaining pages from my pockets. Rip in thirds my femur for your shelter. Tear reinforce my clavicle for your wishes. Break my body into 1,000 little pieces. Sprinkle over the tombstones, add extra for the epitaph that reads, he wrote sad poems but lived an even sadder life. Dramatic, I know. It took me 2 minutes to etch with the dull chopstick up to the word even, so I couldn't waste all that energy and forearm. I couldn't waste this waste of my body. I tried to preserve the decent of me. Use what you will, big dog. Anyway, big dog, that's like the name of my speaker. Wow, thank you for that. From the Tiger Woods. I teach at Tufts, and yesterday I went to the Vietnamese Student Association culture show. It's like the big they have, and they have a lot of great Vietnamese food. And they had thịt kho, which is my favorite Vietnamese dish. And having this dish yesterday and knowing growing it from my mom, I'm always like, I will never ever be able to recreate this dish that my mom has made for me my whole life. But to try to perfect it is what keeps me going in the kitchen. So yeah, this is a poem for my favorite Vietnamese dish. Thịt kho. Miles away, I forget to peel the eggs the night before. Miles away, I forget to buy the special brand of coconut juice. Miles away, my mother is laughing once I swallow my pride and call. It'll never be quite the same, she says. Just try your best and finish your food. When you buy fish sauce, you must remember to wrap it in newspaper. If the bottle breaks in the car, the stench will haunt you long after the car is compacted. She tells me that it's okay to cry because the yolks still aren't hard enough. I am blessed to have a mother who talks about death, who knows her mortality. I imagine my mother's passing. I know she won't have enough grandchildren. I will have added too much pepper, not enough boiled eggs. It's called simmering for a reason. The house smells of coconut. Braised pork and hot rice cleaned thoroughly. Between the sounds of the blue flame lies an emulsified telephone cord. Our recipes will never be quite the same. We both wear gloves to peel eggs. When I cook for my mother, I know she will lie. Thanks for being here. Thank you, Brookline Booksmith, for having us. Thank you for this tight, compact crowd. This is awesome. On a Monday, I just finished the semester at Tufts teaching poetry workshop. One of my students is here. Shout out to Ari. I've been going through a lot of sadness in the semester, personally, externally, etc. But I always say that anytime I'm teaching poetry to my students, I feel right at home. I kind of forget all the sadness and stuff that's in my head. And I'm really grateful to be able to learn from my students and learn poetry together and see them try things with them. So this is a poem that's in the mirror form. So it's a stanza, and then in the middle, the lines reverse using the same words from the lines in the stanza. The first stanza is from the perspective of being a student, and the second stanza is from the perspective of being a teacher. And thank you so much for being here, for listening to me. Or if you're just kind of shopping around, I see you, and just kind of listening to this poetry reading. I don't have a title for this right now. It's just called For All My Teachers and Students. One, as a student. My misery understood that it needed to stay out in the hallway when it was class time. In the shortest of days, the best way to clear my mind was to fill it with knowledge. All the useful, all the useless, all the lessons outside the lessons that temporarily crammed my misery out my ears. to hang on the lobes and audit a life they could lead. I could not stop for death when there was life in the caesura I filled with my anguish. I could not dream of death when there were 300 more pages of theory to read, when there were department drama to hear, when there were crushes to wait outside of the writing center floor. The first time I thought I could be beautiful was a cicada day in Mississippi, and a mentor told me to write something about myself I liked. No humor, no self-deprecation, just eyebrows, just to consume as a writing exercise. For a grade, to participate into myself like a workshop, where it can't be just critique, but also praise and possibility. 2, as a teacher. I know praise is possible and critique can be a dialogue in a workshop. I should know. I run the grades. I give Zuahitsu exercises and we consume the self and laugh about the new Dorothy Chan poem I liked. I received a doctorate from Mississippi so I could be a mentor. A forever cicada here for the beautiful curiosity. They crush, they hear. I listen to the drama of their art, their theories of how to push the page to its limits. Death thinks I could anguish out my grave like Segura, but there's much left to teach, much left poetry to audition into their occipital lobes, serious sonnets, silly sonnets, misery crammed and controlled, lessons on lessons of the use of their hearts, to lessen the fear of not having to the best way of anything. The days are short of time in my class. Out in the hallway, misery stands patiently. I say to it, I need you to stay. I need you to stay. Thank y'all.
Hi, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you so much, Jess, Joshua, and Amanda, for your incredible readings. I am so grateful to be celebrating Slow Render. Thank you, everyone, for taking time for poetry from your busy lives and for coming here on this lovely spring day. And thank you so much, Bonnie and Brookline Booksmith, for this lovely event. I'll just be reading. Thank you. I'll be reading 5 poems from this book. I'm so excited to be sharing these here with you all. This first one is about how silk is made. Work song as silkworm, who renders each thread perfect, whole, life's work, and still only one of thousands strung up the loom, forming, in the best case, something lovely, but not always, and then for whom? Not for the love of it, weaving their enclosures, defining interiority, on the cusp of transformation, then boiled and boiled to such soft uses, bending the use to the user, and we are meant to live with, build the entirety of our cultivations upon these antagonisms, which, used merely as metaphor, can be aimed at truth or against it, i.e. squashing witch spiders, wrapping cobweb over the wound. Yesterday, I inverted 2 Ziploc bags over my hands to meet the hefty worm whose translucence extruded this compost, but would not touch its body, would not say whose world it is truly, not mine, but theirs to the core in the thick mud slab beneath our foil city, beneath the beloved 1 p.m. ray slanting into this rented yard, managed by their despised economies, enriching the deranged soil. How easy to ignore their work. How easy to be the stiff, disgusted human shadowing their mulch, forming opinions, crafting image by covering the silkworm in mulberry leaves gathered by children who drink the silkworm stew, and while living alongside, do not make metaphor, of the worm emitting an unbroken thread, moth breaking the thread to emerge as useless, or the arresting hand unraveling perfection from its dead. You cannot see the brokenness of others like your own brokenness. You are not sure whose side to take. Is the revolutionary the worm or the moth? Is my work the thread or its undoing? Thank you. The second poem is Basking in Monsanto Pond. And I hate Monsanto almost as much as I love historic facts about what fruits used to look like in the past. So this is kind of about that. Basking in Monsanto Pond. In this new country with its prickly pesticide blanket, its millennium grapples, transformations and deft sortings of the perfect and the juiced, bruiseless with peach fuzz intact, that deft and knowing or unknowing hand grinding the useful bone, scattering its meal through the orchard, gnashing its juice in jaw and jaw. Apples the size of my and your head, when I would dream like a child of house-sized fruit, noodle lake, every surface asking for tongue. How you avoid the pith flavor, how you decide where in the cow is the meat. Flavor, pink and crystalline, miracle grow, I spoon into the circle of hard plastic around my yellow spotted leaves. What do you feed the body that outgrows her father by 11, finds blood on brat's undies, finds personhood like the elastic hen, bloated spherical this last century, dredges a pancreas bucket, abattoir hook, gland to vial to blooming seeded flesh above the loose atrophy of their feet, becoming the useful part only, bananas shrinking pearly seeds out of their pudding tubes, the receding pith, compacted rind, a matter of taste, Brussels sprouts breathing their bitterness out, clinging to bitterness in each waxen thumbprint leaf. Each palate bites off its apportionment, chews all the way through. Ripening plastic taste of the world, I am not breathing my bitterness out. Thank you. This next poem is about the landscape that I grew up in California. 2 miles one way for my middle school and then the other way for my high school. It was called the Mountains to Sea Trail. California Gestalt. How small the rains that feed that city, that settle its dust in high, flat glare. City, leaning back in its chair against the coastal ranges. City, paved smooth and level to the concrete drain, the channelized river. So little of it and so confined. I went past every morning and also believed there was one way to manage land and water, to follow our inscription downhill, mountains to sea, where river strokes the esophageal hollow, memory sinks a pale thread of root, the yellow streetlight blooming. What hedge square clipped in the breath mint sky, curb licked clean, draining the trapezoidal valley of sun-flat cement. Bodies width of water meek in the light. One unruly patch, a cloud of sunflies, frilled inches of algae, a dead rabbit, ducklings stepping around it in their slow march to Newport Beach. Now I am the duck, remembering the water as conveyor belt, chorus line, arrow glittering with dew. Now I am the rabbit, and I've had enough. Water and no water, detritus, desire. I will burst through the pores with one more helping of life. I will spill over the lowest railing. Could I have seen it then? If I had followed the levee to its sand foam mouth, knee-deep out to shore, would I have caught its meaning? Would I have known who sat behind my eyes and placed this image high on the shelf of that hollow concrete year? This next poem is about the first apartment I lived in past Union Square in the basement, and this is an image of drowning from the basement bed. Some days to keep the window open is more than I can bear, to strain and sink under the flat wire of light piercing down the grate. Bare branches thread shadow through the stale sheets, heat vibrating damp with hair. The lucky boy on the corner is walking with purpose through the parking lot. The tan line of his missing sock traces half the glass, but his face is up there, invisible, and the crowd is out there, burning, and I can hear them laugh with no distance between, no cushion of air before it hits. Still I sit in the corner and let the years wash over sea level while food goes bad in this house, while solitude gathers in the crevice between tile and wall, congealing the spill into stain, rotting onions through a wire rack, one moment stitched to another and another and another, while the hardened dough of old insulation sags from the ceiling leak, while the trimming browns and horizon crawls, eight-legged over it all. I'll read one last poem. Thank you so much, you guys, for listening. This is My Family Goes Shopping. I remember when my mother wore the same fabric as our quilts, guarding the feet of our dresser, tossing rice to nesting birds in the package box on our balcony, making porridge of bird feed since it was the same as human food. She knew where everything was, toenail clippings that came off in one piece, the cap to each marker, small cups in rainbow order, except blue, which was for teeth. Meadows of plastic eggs and chocolate eggs, real eggs and false nails. All through the acres of white yellow light, I am looking for her, what to get for her birthday, how to remain her child, hoarding her spoons, plucking the best things from her refrigerator in the middle of the night. She lost me there, at the kitchen with 5 freezers, and inside them broken light bulbs, and beneath them the damp burrow where I hide my appetites, where I return to search jealous and apart from the rest.
Move far to this table.
Yes.
All right, and now it is our audience's time to shine. Thank you to the 4 of you for sharing this stunning work. We're really so grateful. But yeah, now commences our Q&A. If you have questions for our poets, feel free to just raise your hand. I'll call on you, and they will answer.
I'm a Pisces.
That explains a lot.
Any questions?
doesn't even have to be poetry related. Anything, right?
Sure.
I do, yeah, it must be for everyone.
Yeah, go right ahead.
When did each of you start writing?
Pass.
I think I started writing poetry to myself, I think in middle school, like, not that I really ever want to revisit any of that, but I think it was really in college that I found community through a spoken word group, and that really shaped just how I saw myself as someone who could maybe write and perform.
Yeah, I was 14, and then my English teacher, Miss Simmons, did like a poetry month unit, and then she did like a mock poetry slam, and she said, if you do this, you get extra credit. So I did it for extra credit. I got second place, but then I found out the first place person plagiarized their poem. So technically I got first place after that. So shout out to that student. And then my prize was to meet local spoken word poets at downtown Houston Library, and I did like a workshop that summer. So
Which poets were they?
it was Outspoken Bean, the fluent one, and Deep. All local, yeah, Houston poets.
I have a friend here who's known me since I was 9, and I was just sort of signaling to her, when did I start writing poetry? Because I was pretty little when I started just getting interested in poetry. My mom used to read us Shel Silverstein books, and you know, that was it. I wrote, you know, all through high school and college, and then I went through this real like dark spell of not writing for about 8 years. I think my 20s, and sometime in my 30s I wanted to get it back, and I started writing again, and in my late 30s did my MFA, and that's when it all became I guess much more public, because up until then it was a very private activity for me.
Yeah, similarly, I always journaled and wrote poems, but didn't share them with anyone. My grandpa was a poet, so it was just in my culture, poetry is just casually a part of everything. But it wasn't until spoken word slam poetry community in Boston in college, and it made me braver, and it just threw me into a world where everyone was living poetry can be everything, and yeah, I don't know, I feel very thankful for that, and it's been no turning back for that.
Beautiful. Do we have other questions for our poets? Oh yeah, go ahead.
This is for Josh.
Oops. So for your Mad Libs poem, I'm wondering if you were to publish it, would you preserve the blanks as they are? How do you envision that as the piece evolves?
Oh man, with the copy down there, but basically on one page is the 17 enter your answer to these list here on the left hand side, and I'll give examples of my own on the right hand side, so people have an example. And then the second page is where there'll be dotted perforated lines. I got this from Sam Sachs, and basically you'll have the poem with the blanks, so it'll be blank, and then if the reader wants their answers from the first page, which they just answer without knowing the poem on the second page, they'll take those answers right into the blanks on the second page, and they can read the poem as is. If you don't want to do that work, I have the example of the answers that I gave on the right hand side, and you just read the poem like that. But I do want the book to be very tactile, and very you can rip things out. which I think is very like scary to say in a bookstore. I have the last poem right now. I want you to bury it in soil. It thinks about like like the body and like the end of the world and all of that. So what does it mean to have like a book in that kind of space? Thanks for the question. Good seeing you.
We do have time for a couple more questions too. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I have a question about how each of y'all approach like images or like quote unquote the image TM. Because I feel like in each of your readings, I was having like very like, at times like vastly different experiences of like images. So like Jess, there were like these descriptions of space and nearly atmosphere and the way images were moving. I felt like I was inside the image, whereas at times with Joshua, like some of your poems that felt more narrative, I felt that like images were the storytelling like tools in order to allow me to like understand what is happening with the speaker. And like Amanda, I felt at times in your poems like the image itself was approaching me, and I was like, no, don't get too close, I'm scared. But like in a good way. And Jess, the far Jess, yeah, there were like a way that images were like almost in some of your poems like transforming themselves, and at times like speaking. And I'm curious how you all find yourselves approaching images and what you find that approach doing as you like write and sort of experience your own poems, both in the writing and reading.
That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for that like lovely reading of our work. I'm so honored, and I feel that in what my approach to image is, I think, as good as any reading of image by a reader, and I think it's just so such a blessing to know sort of what does stay or what does carry impact over the course of like, just hearing things just the once, not seeing it on the page, not being able to stay with it, which I find sometimes can be hard when I'm into poetry. So I think it's just really lovely to know that there is a feeling that stays, and when I'm writing toward image, I think I'm trying to really grab that essence for myself, and it's lovely to know if it has come through, because language is hard. And yeah, I just really thank you so much for your careful listening and kind words.
I was just hanging out. She wrote the poem. Goddamn.
I would say that, yeah, I think this might answer the question, but if not, it'll answer a subconscious question you might have. But when I think of image in my work, I do like to approach my work almost like I'm not saying my poetry is a joke, but like thinking about like the mechanics of a joke and joke writing, and how a lot of times the surprise and the juxtaposition can make an image or images very like delightful. And so I think on the line level, I do like to see images within the line or like in a couplet or etc. Like, what can I do to have these unexpected things put together to propel the narrative or the sentiment or emotion of the poem. And for me, like when I have juxtaposing images that I think are very cool, I think it helps, for me, it helps me, and hopefully helps the reader like get like propelled to the next step of the poem. I'm thinking about like when you're playing Mario Kart and you get like the rings, and then you get like the 10th ring and you get to go even faster and faster. And so I like to think about the juxtaposition and how it propels those images can propel the reader forward.
Yeah, I think really similarly, for myself, I have a natural tendency to want to speak in very grand abstractions. and when I write poems. And so I find that, but I can't get away with it. So I feel like when I'm bringing images into my poetry, it's to carry the freight. It's to carry that freight, so that you feel those abstractions, so that there's something to attach to. So there's something that that the reader has to respond to in memory or in imagination. Yeah.
You know that line in The Office when Michael Scott is like, sometimes I start a sentence and I don't know where it's gonna end. That's how I am kind of with my images. Because like, I don't know, like there's so many things that strike us and we're like, why is this striking me? What does this mean? And I kind of collect them, and I'm like, I'll figure it out later. Like whether in life or whether like when I sit down to write, it's like, okay, like image, like that's like one sense, but like all it's connected to every other sensory or sense around it. And I know that like when I write, I have this like anxiety of like, okay, like I want to say something. I don't want it to be just like all image, because like that is something that happens. Yeah, I feel like that's my process. And I don't know if that answers the question, but I just kind of hope for the best. Sorry. Thank you for your thoughtfulness.
The process is working. Beautiful. We do have, I want to give folks one more chance. We have time for one more question. And I think in the front, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, she had her hand earlier. I'm sorry about that.
I didn't know about this, so I'm very happy to be here participating.
Thank God it worked out.
Yeah. But in a world of technology where everybody is just going through so many, it's lovely to see people, they're still writing poetry. So how do you see yourselves in a few years from now? And do you think you can impact and how others to do what you're doing? Because this is amazing, and we have a whole generation that is losing this, and it's amazing to see people still doing this, doing poetry.
Yeah, I have also been inspired and nourished by every poet I've met and every poetry teacher, and I think that's why I have kept returning to poetry, even at times when the poems I was writing were like in my email, like draft compose tab or something while I was like time stepping for my corporate job or something, that where there's that need to have poetry still, or to feeling it was just irrepressible, and I think that's inherent in the power of poetry, and I think that teaching is such a magical thing. I'm kind of I had taught architecture before, but I'm new to teaching poetry, and I think just I think that has so much impact in the way that we develop as humans in the world, and I feel really blessed to be able to share my love of poetry with everyone.
Yeah, I teach poetry workshop at times, but I also teach just like a first year writing course at Boston College. But either way, I think teaching writing, my hope is that it teaches, if anything, empathy, like how to read read, how to understand the perspective of others, etc. So I think that's like the big hope, is that like, if anything, poetry can give empathy. It can teach people to have empathy no matter what they do in their life. And the second thing I think about when thinking about like my future in poetry is that like this kind of environment, like us having this connection and like having a room full of people listen to poetry, like this is like a once in a lifetime thing. Like we can't mimic this. Like it would be very hard to mimic the same vibe, the same people, the same bookstore, the same like Taco Bell meal I had beforehand. You know, it's like there's a very like ethereal like repertoire thing happening. And I think this poetry readings helps with like inspiring folks and to hopefully like get them to think about themselves in a creative way.
Something I think about poetry, I think is so cool about poetry, is that it's like it's like the easiest to get to the people. Like you can like tag a wall with a line from a poem. Your friend can text you like a few words and it'll strike you and you'll be like, that's a poem. Like poetry to me is like noticing, and it's like zooming in, zooming out. It's like seeing the moving pieces, and that's something that like all of us do as humans. So I feel really passionate about like, I don't teach anymore, but when I was really dedicated to like breaking down that wall that, I don't know whether it's like academia or sort of like the divide we have in society between like the humanities and like something else. But yeah, I don't know, like when, was it Bob Dylan who won the something for poetry, and if I wasn't mad, I don't know, like music is poetry, that's my hot take. Everything is poetry. So yeah, I feel like talking about poetry and literature and art like the same way I would like talk about the weather or like talk about like a sports score. I don't know, like I think that's to answer your question of like how would I as a poet go into the world. I mean, I just try to talk about poems to everyone casually, and even if they're like, what? By the end of the conversation, we're like talking about something they've seen or like something that struck them. Yeah, I don't know, I think it doesn't feel like dire, like it feels like we're all like closer to it than it seems. Thank you.
Yeah, just that I think I've been really spoiled in the last 10 years with a lot of the students that I've had, and really sort of excited to see my students' interest in writing poetry while having these completely, you know, other lives and professional goals and prospects that have nothing to do with poetry, which is really exciting, right? Because that means that it has a presence for people, not just people who are producing it, but for people who are just taking it in and taking in, you know, other parts of their lives and incorporating that back into poetry. And so I feel like there's this very, very hopeful, very fluid sort of interchange. Yeah.
That's a really beautiful note to end on. There's hope for poetry. There's poetry happening in this room. Let's give one more round of applause. Thank you to our audience for being here, for being poetry lovers. It means the world. We are going to commence the signing portion of our event, so you can feel free to just come hang it. We have a line forming, just send it kind of that way generally. And thanks again so much for being here. It's really lovely to see this room faces. Thank you. Thanks for bearing with me with the ice squeeze we got, but beautiful. Thanks.